Hello?
Yes, Duncan, we are now in your hands.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you very much and welcome to this webinar. Sorry for the little technical hitch. Thank you very much. I want to give a short introduction about Conrad, which is Conrad is a German political foundation, which is closely associated with the CDU party, which is the Germany. And we are working towards contributing and promotion of democracy, rule of law, and social market economy. We work in over 120 countries across the globe, and we began operations in Kenya in 1974. Coming down to our programs, we have several. We have the rule of law program, we have a country program and evolution program, and we have a unique food security program, which is trying to strengthen crisis management in Kenya towards sustainable food systems. We believe that perennial food insecurity, especially in the northern Kenya and other areas of and other parts of Kenya, need holistic approach and even political decisions, and not just maybe food distribution and relief. Or we work with the partners in our operations like the civil societies, we work with the national government, we work with the academia. Coming down to today's webinar, which is sustained food security during COVID-19. We have realized that since COVID hit Kenya, many measures have been put by the government of Kenya in a bid to curtail the spread of the virus. And we've realized that many of these measures have really interfered with the livelihoods of many Kenyans and the distribution and movement of food from one part of the country to the other. Even if we leave alone diminished or cash to the people's pockets, we believe that food or a right to food should still be maintained. That is why today's webinar, we are being joined by joined by guys from various institutions who are key in ensuring that sustained food distribution and access is ensured even during this COVID-19, because sustained food security is part of prevention, because people are needed to stay at home, but what do they eat at home? So I welcome you to this webinar, and I look forward to fruitful discussions from our panelists and even our viewers. For our viewers, feel free to ask and throw questions and even your contributions through our links. We are streaming live on Facebook. You can watch them also on Zoom, You can as well share your questions through the Q&A link. Up to this moment, I pass this to our moderator, Ms. Kingwa Kamensho, and I welcome you on board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Duncan, for that background of really the topic of today, as well as just letting us know about CASE's programs and its activities in the country from as far back as 1974. For now, this is a very important topic. First of all, this is a very, very important topic at this time. And I think because Kenya has faced a crisis of food, or rather a food insecurity situation from as far back as we can remember. This is a very, very important discussion to have. And then with that background of continual food problems, then just accelerated by what's happening with the COVID situation today, that just really highlights just why we really need to be exploring this a lot more at length. So we are joined, so I also want to welcome our panelists. We have a very, a great team with us, people that are very passionate and very dedicated and that have been working on the food security, in the food security sector over the years. So I would like to welcome our panelists. I would also like to welcome the attendees, the participants. Karibuni sana, feel free to, now for our attendants, feel free to just chip in with comments along the way and questions along the way. And in the first hour, we'll be hearing from our panelists, and the second hour, we'll really give a lot more of the attention to making the discussion interactive. So just as I was getting started for the discussion, because my background is really not food security, but that was one of the reasons I was very interested in looking at this, because for me, it was a question of finding out really what is the situation, what is the situation right now, and what is possible. And I went as much as possible, and in terms food security, the World Health Organization states that food security is achieved when all people at all times have physical and economic access to adequate, sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. Food security, therefore, is not the physical availability of any single commodity, such as maize in the Kenyan context. Neither does it imply just availability, but must be accessible in terms of affordability in adequate quantities containing essential nutrients. And I know that maybe some of the most famous situations of food insecurity that we've seen has been in Turkana in the previous years. This year and at this current time, one thing that came out prominently was the idea of 30,000 families in Nyandarua facing hunger, and which was an interesting thing because Nyandarua is supposed to be one of our bread baskets as a country. Again, I looked around looking at countries that have efficient food supply. Of course, when you see the top 10 food exporters, it's United States, Germany, UK, China, France, Netherlands, and as well as other European countries. And in terms of countries without sufficient food supply, we see Kenya coming in at number 30, let me just get that right, at number 13. And so for now, I think I'll just jump right in and introduce our panelists, and I'll just mention their names, and then I'll give them the opportunity to say some more about themselves and their work on this current situation. So we're very happy to be joined by, we have Mr. Sunya Ore, who is the Director of Programs at National Drought Management Association. We have Mr. Omar Jibril of the ASAL Stakeholders Forum. He's the National Coordinator. We have with us Madam Susan Githaiga, who is a country director, ICCO Corporation. And we have with us Honorable Adan Yusuf Haji. He is the MP Mandera West, chair of the Pastoralist Parliamentary Group and the Livestock PPG Livestock Subcommittee. I see that she hasn't joined us yet, but we are supposed to be joined by Rebecca Tanui, who's a coordinator of Building Eastern Africa Community Network. So maybe as we begin this discussion, probably the first thing would be to just to touch base. So maybe the first thing would be to ask our panelists to just maybe say some more about themselves and their work, and just tell us their perspectives of how do you feel that we are doing right now in terms of our food security. Do you think that the measures that the government has taken in terms of some of the money that has been set aside, as well as other initiatives, do you think that will take care of us well enough, or are we at a crisis point? So maybe I will start with Madam Susan Githaiga. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Kigwa. I'm happy to see all of you. Good evening from Achili, Nairobi. I believe most of us are joining in from the same time zone, so I would say good evening to all of us. I work for ICCO Corporation, which is a Dutch organization that works mostly with farmers. So we work with farmers with a keen target on working with the youth, looking at possible ways where we can empower the youth in terms of agribusiness, with access to finance, with access to possibly better farm inputs and market access, market information. So we work mostly with smallholder farmers across various countries across the world. So in Kenya particularly, we work mostly in Western Kenya and in the coastal region with various value chains that we are interested in supporting, basically based on the needs of the community. And as you've mentioned, and as we've seen in the recent couple of months, starting last year, we, as a country, we started with facing some level of drought, then we went to some flooding, then towards the beginning of the year, we had now again the desert locust invasion. Now we have COVID-19. So we've been facing triple disasters in a period of less than 1 year as a country as a whole. And this greatly impacts on food security in the country. And I would be missing the point if I just mentioned food security and miss to mention the issue of nutrition. So I would like to just speak on it in terms of food and nutrition security. So with these disasters that we've been facing month after month, just when we think we are catching a break, we hear the locusts that we thought had gone, they were breeding, and now they're back again. Just when we think you're catching a break, there's the COVID-19 with the restricted movements and its impact on our farmers. Then when we think we're catching a break again, we've seen very high levels of rainfall, and the rainfall has come at a point where most of our farmers again were now starting the planting season. So what is happening to the plants that have just been, that have just been planted by our farmers, with the increase and above average rainfall and flooding in some parts of the country? So what does this tell us, or what does it mean to our food and nutrition security? So it is a situation that we have not faced before. In terms of desert locust, I believe the last time there was a desert locust infestation was over 70 or so years ago. Then in terms of a global pandemic, we've not been in that situation before. And this is something that the government is grappling with, the development partners, including ourselves and our host Conrad, we are grappling with. And it's something that as a whole, we need to come together We need to have more conversations like this to look at what are the different stakeholders doing to support the current situation, because the government alone cannot be able to manage. The development partners alone cannot be able to manage. As ourselves, as just normal citizens, smallholder farmers, who we are the majority in the country, we really cannot be able to manage. And we know that Kenya, agriculture is the backbone of our economy. From the time we were growing up, we've always been told that agriculture is the backbone of our economy, and we have seen it being the backbone of our economy. What are we doing to ensure that the agriculture being the backbone of our economy, with, for example, the most recent budget that was tabled before Parliament, being the backbone? Are we investing enough in agriculture to ensure that there's food security for the people? Being one of the key pillars in our Vision 2030, being one of the big 4 agenda items, what are we doing enough? And I'm happy that we have Mheshimiwa with us today. We have my other colleagues, Mr. Sunya, we have Mr. Omar, who we can all have these conversations, and we can never have enough conversations to look at what are we doing, what are we learning from it, how do we move past it, how do we continuously improve. So just as a brief, I'm not so sure how much more I was to say at this point. Yeah, but in terms of food security, coming from a background where year after year we've been facing hunger, I'd like to point out to a most recent released report, the Global Hunger Index 2019 report, which puts Kenya at serious levels. So we have various levels of hunger across the world. So we have low, moderate, serious, alarming, and extremely alarming. And Kenya falls under serious. We are just slightly above countries like the Central African Republic. We're just slightly above countries that are facing severe conflicts like the South Sudan countries and stuff. So us rating at around 25.2% when it comes to global hunger index, we are definitely still at a serious position. And this was last year that the report was done. What about now with the disasters that I've just mentioned? So it's something critical. It's something that we need to look at as we are headed towards very critical levels.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Just also for reminding us that it's not the government is not the one that's going to fight the situation on its own. So that was a really good reminder that a lot of it is about coordinating with the different groups in entrepreneurship, groups in civil society, as well as the government itself. I'd like to bring in Mr. Omar Jibril, and just to ask you to say a bit about yourself and your background in this field, as well as your perspectives, your own insights and observations. How do you think we are doing in terms of food security? So you can kindly unmute yourself.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You can hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Omar Jibril. I am the National Coordinator for ASAL Stakeholder Forum. ASAL Stakeholder Forum was an institution it's a forum basically, it's not an institution, that was established by the sessional paper number 8 of 2012. That is the sessional paper that repealed the sessional paper number 10 of 1965, which had given the policy position to government to marginalize the ASAL areas. So basically the ASALs have become a part of the Kenya development agenda after the repeal of that paper. You'll be surprised that the ASAL areas were not even considered in this much hyped Vision 2030 for the development of this country. You can just imagine the level of policy marginalization that the ASALs have had over the years. Thank God, with the establishment of the Ministry of Northern Kenya and other arid areas in 2008, a lot of policy injustices that were in place were corrected by that ministry. One of them was the sessional paper number 8 with the ASAL development policy that was approved in 2012, and that actually established institutions to actually transform the development agenda in the ASAL areas. Among them is the National Drought Management Authority, which is represented here by Mr. Sunya. That was established as a specialized institution to deal with the issues that are affecting the ASALs, which is drought. And they have done a tremendous job in the areas of early warning, in the areas of response planning, coordinating. They have done a lot. The other institution that was supposed to be established was the Kenya Livestock Marketing Board. I think the Mheshimiwa Haji will highlight on where we are in terms of the establishment of that institution. Then the other one was to deal with the issues education, which is the National Council for Nomadic Education, supposed to be another key institution that was to be established. It is in place, but again, it has some teething problems. And then the ASAL Stakeholder Forum. The forum was supposed to bring together the actors in the ASAL areas so that they can share knowledge, basically the issues of knowledge management, the issues of coordinating, joint planning, and mainly advocacy on the ASAL issues. This was meant to bring the ASAL think tank together so that issues can be discussed and the best approaches to development issues were supposed to be jointly planned. My background, I'm a disaster management specialist, and I've worked with several civil society organizations, and I joined the ASAL Forum as a coordinator in 2017. So I've interacted from the policy making to the grassroots on the issues food security, as the earlier speaker who started us off has actually ably stated. As a country, we are doing actually very badly. But as you have said, from the budgeting aspects, Mheshimiwa in the morning in the brief that we had given, we are just about 100 and I think 30 or closely there billion in the agriculture sector. When we are talking of 3 trillion budget, and as by the global index where we stand as a country, if you compare that to our budget, then basically somebody outside can declare us as a country of jokers, because where is our priority? And then we are just looking at the national level budgeting. It's so unfortunate. If you go to the county level budgeting process, you will be shocked. In the counties of the pastoralist counties, for example, you're talking of Mandera, the Samburu, the Turkana, the Wajir, the Garissa, and you look at their budget. I think infrastructure, which is roads, takes more than $1 billion, and you have less than 300 million for agriculture and livestock. And so basically the lack of seriousness is devolved. And so as a country, that is something that actually at the policy level, we need to come together and advocate for proper budgeting for our key food security sectors, whether it is livestock, whether it is fishing, whether it is beekeeping, whether it is agriculture. And every area or every region has its unique opportunities in terms of food security. The purely pastoralist counties need to invest seriously in livestock production, which is basically the entire production system, the marketing, the value chain, and all that. The purely agricultural counties also need to do, serious investment. I mean, can you imagine a county that relies more than 80% of its livelihood on livestock, investing more than $1 billion in roads, Marabing feeder roads? You don't need any feeder road to bring livestock to the market. For heaven's sake, you need to produce that livestock and basically take care of the market and the value addition. You don't need to maram all these roads. And then the other issue is our institutions. For example, right now we are bedeviled with a lot of crises, whether it is COVID, whether it is the locust, whether it is floods. But look at the way we respond as a country, from the county level to the national level. Which institution can you say is a specialized institution to coordinate, to plan, to respond to issues, emergencies, whether it is a nutritional emergency or food security emergency, whether it is floods, whether it is you don't have that single. Remember our disaster management bill. It was a bill from 2005 to date.
Yes.
You can just imagine.
And all sector.
Pardon? Hello?
Yes, so thank you so much for that. Thank you for that. And I really like how you have the grasp of all the laws and really the background of the food security situation in the ASAL region. You understand it very well. For our participants who don't know what ASAL is, ASAL means arid and semi-arid land. So for now, we'll go to, so thank you, Mr. Omar. Now I'd like to ask Honorable Haji Adan to, again, just give us your views in terms of how you think we are doing right now as a country. And also to be interested to hear your background in this sector. Like from the earlier discussion, it was clear that you have been a person that's been very much in this space and have added a lot of value and made a lot of contributions that you're very passionate about. So we'll be very happy to hear from you. Karibu Mheshimiwa.
Okay, thank you so much. Happy to join the team. As I requested earlier, I need a break from around 6:35 to 6:40 for my evening prayers, which is a compulsory, and it's almost colliding with the time you have given me that one. So let me quickly say something small, go for evening prayer, and then in 10 minutes time or less, I'll be back. So to start with, my names, as you said, is already Adan Haji Yusuf, Member of Parliament for Mandera West, a member of the Agricultural Committee of the National Assembly, the chair of Pastoralist Parliamentary Group Livestock Subsector, the point person for Kenya government in the Eastern African Parliamentary Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition, which composes 11 countries. That is me. In order to, initially you said that you are not a food expert, but from the definition you give us about food security, where when all people at all times have physical and social and economic, that definition you give is the right definition. But that definition has to follow with 4 pillars. That is the food availability, which is the physical existence of the food. And then food accessibility. That is to ensure all households have enough resources to obtain food sufficiently in quantity, in quality, and in diversity for a nutritious diet. The third pillar of the food security is food use and utilization. This is a socio-economic aspect of the household food nutrition securities, which is determined by the habit of the people. In Kenya, maize. Maize is food. Of course, where I come from, meat is food. But most of the Kenyan region, maize is food. Then finally, we are talking of the food stability. That is food and nutrition security in respect to time frame, that is to have food at all time. Those pillars are very important in food security. Looking at our situation as a country of food security and nutrition, I am not pleased to report that we were far much better during the colonial times compared to the whole of our 50-something years of independence in terms of food security. It is very unfortunate because relief food distribution, which is a constant thing throughout the year in part of this country, particularly the ASAL areas, is something that started after independence. It never used to be there before independence. And people were feeding, people were eating, people were surviving. There were not much problems of starvation during those times. It is unfortunate. Some of the policies that came with independence actually created food insecurity. A good one is the food relief distribution. The amount of food or amount of money that is spent on food relief to give to almost all the ASAL areas throughout the year is just enormous. If you could have put that money into sustainable food production, into resilience programs, I'm telling you, the 1 year food distribution will cover, 2 years food distribution in the ASAL area as a relief could have put us in a sustained and resilient system, the amount of money that we spend. So those policies are very bad. Recently, we have 3 or 4 issues that have made our situation of food security and nutrition worse. The first one is, you remember about 2 years ago, we had a very serious drought all over the country, and therefore our food situation became very bad. That was followed by some heavy rains and a lot of floods. The floods also caused serious food insecurity and nutrition. We were, after the floods, of course, we had a lot of vegetation germinations, a lot of pastures for the pastoral areas, a lot of crops were planted, but unfortunately, we got the desert locusts coming, and it swept throughout the country. It started with the north, actually it started with Mandera. We made enormous amount of noise for it to be controlled there. Unfortunately, the government said that maybe the last 70 or so years there was no locust, and even those planes which had to spray the locust, for some of them, most of them were packed for 16 years. So for those things to be put into operation, it took a lot of time. The locust was not controlled at the entry points, and therefore it spread all over the country, and that brought us serious food insecurity. The locust was followed by, again, diseases. There is the army fall worm for crop diseases. Currently, as we are talking here, camels are dying in big numbers in ASAL areas for disease which they say is a viral disease. It is the corona of the animals. It's the corona of the camels. They call it Mediterranean respiratory fever. It is just a corona of the camel. A lot of camels, as we speak, are dying. That is, again, another serious food situation. Of course, the worst of all is COVID-19. As it came, it's not only the food production system, but it interfered with the whole livelihood systems. It interfered with the movements of the people. It interfered with farmers going to their farms and they're working. It interferes with food being transported day and night from areas where there is abundance of food to areas where there is a limited food. So Corona or COVID-19 has seriously interfered with the whole system. I think I'll break here. I'll take a 10 minutes break for prayers, and then come back and continue from there if you give me the opportunity. Thank you so much. Unless
That's
there is
right.
some question.
That's
I
right.
will
Thank you.
I'll talk about the livestock marketing board. I'll talk about the budget allocation for the year. But let me have my break for my prayers.
That's all right. Thank you, Mheshimiwa. That was very insightful. Thank you for that. So, Mr. Sunya Ore, we shall go to you. And Omar Jibril actually said a lot of good things about your organization, the National Drought Management Authority. I had said association first, which was wrong. And yeah, so Karibu, so maybe tell us about what the organization is doing right now, your own background in this space, and just really your readings of how we are doing right now.
Yeah, thank you, Kinga. Good evening, participants and the fellow panelists. I will first consider the context within which you operate, which is quite unusual. That the pre-corona period, we operated, the whole world operated as a global village, where you produce and take your products to a supermarket, so to say, and where then, depending on what you need, you go and buy from that market. You therefore produce what the market demands, and you buy what you want. Before I go there, perhaps let me also introduce myself. I normally forget to introduce myself, but let me introduce myself and my organization. I'm Sunya Ore, Director for Technical Services, National Drought Management Authority. The National Drought Management Authority has been created by an act of parliament, and it is responsible for providing, basically coordinating drought matters as well as climate change adaptation. We do this through three-pronged approach. The first approach is providing drought early warning information and the databases and keeping the databases. We also do contingency planning. We support communities, the county governments, in the 23 ASAL counties, arid and semi-arid counties that we operate, develop contingency plans at the world level. We also prepare response plans based on their needs. And actually, it's not just about drought. When it comes to disaster risk management, communities map their risks based on their own environment. Some of the risks could be floods, it could be drought, and it could be other disasters. And then they prioritize, map out what they need, and then also indicate what they can do, and then what the county governments can do, and what could be the gaps. And it's our responsibility then to coordinate based on that information. We also actually then do response. Apart from planning, we also do response. And we do this through the county governments. We have an elaborate coordination framework from the level of cabinet secretaries to a technical level, where we have quite a number of actors, including international NGOs, and other national NGOs, government institutions, government ministries, UN agencies. And their responsibility, of course, they have various responsibilities, but we share with them information, and based on those plans, then of course they respond. We know, and just as quite a number of the speakers have said, including nearly all the speakers, response is not a solution. Solution is resilience building, understanding your climate change adaptation needs. Yeah, so we have the resilience track as well, where we coordinate resilience initiatives, and we do this through a strategy, the ending droughts emergencies strategy, which was from 2012, and we hoped by actually 2022 we'll have then reduced drought emergencies. Yeah, so that's the track approach, the 3-track approach that I was talking about. As organization, I will come back later in terms of what we are doing currently, but I want us, all of us, first to understand what has really changed. Because for us, in my view, so long as we know what has changed, then we can plan based on that particular, on that knowledge. I think the key thing that have changed, that global village has been disrupted. And it's not just global village. And even at the national level, that village, national village that we share has been disrupted. And it's not only that village. Yeah, so so there's a lot of, there's the social separation. There's the social separation, food or other goods cannot move to where they should. What then happens? There will be the supply, demand will outstrip supply, because food will not move from areas of deficit to areas of supply. And it's not just food, it could be medicine, it could be all other goods. So there's the disruption of such systems.
Okay,
now, with
thank you for that very comprehensive background, and we shall come back to you, Mr. Sunya. I think you're making some very good points. I think for now, and actually, I'm glad how just the very broad introductions that you've given have also helped us see that even beyond understanding, just even beyond COVID, what has been the reason for the continued food insecurity in the country. So that was actually supposed to be a separate question, but I'm glad how in all of your answers you have been able to talk to that. So maybe for now would be just a quick understanding of in terms of the figures that your organization, what have you been able to get in terms of the current COVID situation? What are the numbers that you have right now, and what are the interventions that your organizations are taking? So maybe we could start with Susan.
Yes, just reported that I'm back. Okay.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa. Thank you.
Karibu Mheshimiwa, and thank you for your prayers. Maybe something that I would like to point out in terms of the figures, to begin with Kingwa, is that as a country, when you look at the various government departments, one challenge that we are facing is lack of sufficient data. And this comes from all the counties at collection points. So as of beginning of this month, there are still reports from the various government departments that they have not been furnished with sufficient data from a majority of the counties in terms of what is in our reserves at the various county levels, and even what is in production. So at this point, we cannot, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mheshimiwa, even the government itself cannot speak with authority on the actual figures that we have in the various counties in terms of food, from production to even to what we have in our reserves. But we see that the government has reported that we have enough reserves to the end of June. But we've seen that the government has, we've seen some shipments already almost at the docks, if not already there. We have huge shipments of maize to supplement whatever we currently have in our reserves. So in terms of, one of the challenges that we have been facing from time immemorial is lack of sufficient data, and planning without data, without concrete figures, really is like what we are working blind, yeah? So when some of the figures that are being reported, to some extent, I can quote unquote call them rumors, because we really cannot back them up And this is something that we need to, yes, we need to really invest in this, both all the stakeholders involved in the food system in Kenya. We really need to invest in this, because for us to properly plan, for us to properly forecast, for us to properly know how to tackle this whole crisis of food security, we really need sufficient and timely data. And we need data from all the counties, including the Manderas, including the Wajirs, all the counties that have been marginalized in the past and are still being marginalized, and even the bread baskets of the country. And just before I forget, when I'm mentioning the bread baskets of the country, when you began, you mentioned crises in places like Nyandarua. I can tell you for a fact, being from working with people and farmers from all those areas, these are areas that are faced with perennial famine, to be honest. Wow. And that's the irony is, they are in the highlands. They always, you'd think, oh, they always engage in farming. But remember, most of the crops that survive in these regions are the perishables, the cabbages, the potatoes. Then what happens when they have harvested? We have the middlemen who come with the excess. You remember the gunias that they've always had that are like 2 gunias in one, and they buy them at throwaway price, and the farmer is compelled to sell, because if you do not sell, it will go bad. So if, as long as we continue with the same system in the market, as long as we continue not investing in value addition plants, in value addition, these areas, the Nyandaruas, parts of Nyeri, parts of this central part of the country will continue to face famine. Yet it is blind, the government is blind to this plight. But remember, by the time they're harvesting their potatoes, what happens? They're flogged in the market. It's all the farmers who are harvesting at that point, right? And you pass every time, I'm sure we use the road, and you can see, whenever you pass, you'll see huge harvests, and you find one cabbage that a farmer invested over 3 or 4 months in cultivating this one cabbage, selling for less than 5 shillings. With our current inflation rates and the prices in the market, what would 5 shillings do, to be honest? Would it even take your children to school, let alone feed your family? So they end up selling, because if you don't sell, it will go bad. And then they end up without food, because whatever they earned from the market cannot even sustain them for another month or 2. So that is something that I just wanted to point out, because when you started, you mentioned counties like Nyandarua facing food shortage, and this is a crisis that is there in so many other counties. So back to your question, we do not have sufficient data. So even if today we gave figures, they cannot really be substantiated scientifically, but we know that the government is trying various efforts. But my question is, and this is to Mheshimiwa and the rest of my fellow panelists, is this created by design, the chaos and the lack of coordination? Can we rightfully, because our role as the development partner in the civil society, our question to us is this lack of coordination and the chaos we see in the food system, can we rightfully say it is created, it's by design? And what can we do about it? Because year after year, we know this has always been the problem. And Mheshimiwa, before you left, you mentioned that before independence, we never used to have food insecurity. So are we saying, our leaders, we want to put you on the spot as our leaders to also just be accountable to us and as the citizens, and tell us what is happening? Is it by design? Why are we year after year having the same conversations?
Thank you so much, Susan. And Esther Achieng, one of our participants, is actually backing what you're saying. She says that the data can't be backed up due to the politicization of the census. What does the Kenyan National Bureau of Standards do to aid this? A key challenge is the lack of investment in gender data for development. We must push to do census for development and not for elections. David Carrier had said that was quite insightful. Meshach had responded to Mr. Jibril, saying, good observation, Mr. Jibril. Devolution provides an opportunity to address food security. Now resources trickle down to the people through county government, and solutions should be county-led. countries should use the resources they have and add value. That will be our game changer to achieve sustainable systems. Maybe I'll allow so Mheshimiwa and Sunya, then Omar, and also Duncan, who's with us. Maybe just say something small in terms of data. What data do you have right now? For example, Mheshimiwa Adan, what data is Parliament working with in terms of the particularly for right now? What are the numbers of people facing food, facing hunger? What are the numbers? And also the money that has been allocated. How has it been divided based on what rationale? So karibu sana Mheshimiwa.
Okay, I think the data we have right away in terms of people suffering from lack of food is estimated, as Susan said. It's true that it is not scientifically verified data, but it's estimated about 10 million Kenyans today. 10 million Kenyans countrywide, which include farmers, include pastoralists, fishermen and women, people living in the urban and the rural area. In total, we are talking about 10 million people without sufficient today. As I said in, in my introductory remark in the morning, the biggest budget food security has been put in 2019-2020 budget, which is last year or this year, the year now ended June, the budget for the budget on food security total was about 70 million. Now we have budgeted 132 million. This, when we talk of food security, this budget is not only to the Ministry of Agriculture. It can be also, I'm sorry.
It's okay, we can give you time.
No, give me a glass of water. Yeah, let me continue. It can also be, it is money to Ministry of Agriculture. It is money for economic stimulus, which are related to food security or food production and transportation. It is money for the Big Four agenda. Agriculture is being one of them, so there's a specific budget lines in almost every ministry with a Big Four agenda. So agriculture has its own Big Four agenda. All that money put together, we have this year budgeted for 132. But the problem that we have this year is 3 or 4 folds compared to last year's food insecurity problems. And therefore, we shall still going to have food insecurity. This will not be enough. The other issue is, we have a policy of the strategic food reserve. And the strategic food reserve before 2019 was only taking care of maize only. And within 2019, we legislated and made sure that we must have a strategic food reserve in terms of maize, rice, pulses, powdered milk, and dried meat, so that it can cover the diversity of the food requirement in the country. Strategic food reserve does not mean only food in a store. It can also mean money readily available to acquire food anywhere in the world when it is required. As we are talking today, we have 11 billion shillings cash in strategic food reserve.
There's been some, allow me to ask, there was some controversy about the strategic food reserve fund, because at first it was said that it was going to be closed in 6 months, and then there were reports that money had been misappropriated.
Yes, I understand that very well. there's, as usual, there's a lot of conflict between different departments of the government. There was the Strategic Food Reserve, which was working very closely with the National Cereals and Produce Board. National Cereals and Produce Board, all over the years, you know it very well, has been reported having a lot of corruption. Recently, last year, I think they sacked almost all the senior staff at a go because of corruption. And therefore, we have reached a stage whereby the money for the strategic reserve, if the food is sold, the money goes to, I mean, because the food is in the stores of the National Cereals and Produce Board, they are the ones who sell the money. And when they sell the money, they did not account for that money easily and bring it back to the accounts of the the Strategic Food Reserve. Therefore, there was a lot of pull and push here and there. But what is now happening is that in the next 6 months, there is a strategy which is being made so that we harmonize the two. We harmonize the Strategic Food Reserve and the National Cereals and Produce Board, make it into one board that is effective and efficient. And we also recently, last year, legislated what is called the receipt system, you know, where you can, as a farmer, you can buy, you can take your maize or your food produce to a store, get a receipt, and then that receipt is like money. You can go and get it in the banks, money, you can go and borrow it, you can go and do whatever you want with it, even before you sell your food. And therefore, there is a strategy now going on to harmonize those three systems. And the government has given it now 6 months to come up with a strategy or a policy to harmonize and find out. It is true that strategic reserve was about to be abolished by a ministerial directive, but the parliament and other organs of the country said that no, let us harmonize this, put them together, and then we move forward with it. I've talked about the budget. There's somebody, Jibril asked about Livestock Marketing Board. Yes, Livestock Marketing Board is in its final stage. Hope the next 2 months, it will be a bill. The president will sign to it, and then we form the board and move forward with it. It's its final stage, third reading stage. Okay. Other aspects of impact of Corona is, I think, marketing. Marketing is a very important aspect of strategic food security. And the Corona, because of some counties being closed down or some areas being closed down, restricting movements at a certain time, because of curfew, marketing of food items have seriously been affected. And whether I'm a legislation or whether you or anybody in this country knows that we have the biggest enemy with us, who is a corruption. More worse, corruption is more worse than Corona and all other diseases that we have in this country. And with, of course, these policies and procedures of trying to make sure we avoid Corona, corruption has also gone up. Corruption has gone up. You see vehicles carrying very essential food being stopped at a barrier for days or for nights. You know what's happening at the border areas where load is carrying. A lot of these things is because of corruption. And therefore, as Kenyans, the first enemy, the biggest enemy we have, which we need to fight, by all means, by everybody, not only the government. The government alone cannot fight corruption. If the government officials are corrupt, it is us, the community, which is also giving that money or that corruption money. So it is both sides. Unless we stop corruption, the food insecurity will always be there, and starvation will always be there, and serious underdevelopment will always be there. Can we focus on corruption? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mheshimiwa. And one of our participants called Epaphras Magumba agrees with you. He says that all that money put together is meant for looting and 2022 elections. So Mr. Sunya Ore, sorry, I had cut you short, but yes, kindly just, you can just end, or rather complete what you had been saying, and also just tell us how is the NDMA working right now in terms of what is the data that you have about the food situation in Kenya right now and how people are getting affected, and what is the organization doing right now?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kingo. We conduct food security assessments. We also collect data on monthly basis on various indicators, particularly relating to food security, environmental, economic, social, nutrition, among other indicators. And the last assessment that we did, and we normally do assessments, comprehensive assessments, seasonal assessments for the ASEL counties. That was before the corona, because we did it in early March, the comprehensive assessment. 1.3 million households in 123 ASEL counties were food insecure by then. And out of these, 200,000 were at the emergency situation. And we use standard international standards, the integrated food security first classification. That's the standards that we use. But we expect, because for the comprehensive assessments we do biannually, although the drought situation assessments we do on monthly basis, we expect that those numbers to have really gone up. Now, in terms of what are the numbers in terms of the food situation, the authority is the Ministry of Agriculture, and I've tried to look at the information that they have at the moment, which Susan has alluded to. In terms of the maize, because Kenyans consider maize as food, as at 30th June, the estimation is that there will be a surplus of 3.4 million bags. Considering that a Kenyan, an average Kenyan, on average, Kenyans consume 103 kilograms of maize annually, our monthly requirement is about 4.3 million. Rice, and most of the rice is imported, 411,000 bags, sorghum, 450,000 bags. If you look at the cereals now, it's the surplus that we had will take us just about a month. But we also know that the harvest for the last season will begin from July to September. The government has also okayed, will facilitate conditional importation of, and I think that's what Susan was also alluding to, importation of 2 million bags of white maize for human consumption, and 200 million bags of yellow maize mainly for livestock consumption.
Sorry to interrupt, why would the government be importing additional bags yet there's a surplus? Or do you, when you say surplus, do you mean compared to other years?
That's yeah. I don't work with the Ministry of Agriculture. This is based on the information that I did my research. Those are the numbers. That question I don't think I can answer. Yeah. So
let me just, if I can just mention the surplus. The surplus that he had mentioned would only last us up to 30th of June.
1 month. Yeah.
So based on the statistics on our the amounts we eat, after 30th of June, we need to the ones that they're importing before now the farmers harvest after the long rains, because and now the situation is even worse because we don't know what happens after the flooding, if we really have sufficient harvest this year. So this is up to 30th of June. After that, we now have to depend on the imported maize.
Yes.
Thanks for that clarification, Susan.
Yes.
Sorry,
And
Mr. Sunya, I cut you short.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, one of the issues is that Kenya, we are net importers, even for maize. And we depend on our neighbors, particularly Uganda and Tanzania. Now that the borders, and it's rational for every government now, it makes sense for each of the countries to actually close these borders, to have the food remains within its borders, because COVID-19 has really changed those equations. Yeah, so probably I think that could have been the reasoning, but we also understand, we also know that the harvest will begin from July to September. There will be some harvest, despite the fact that because of the floods, perhaps the performance according to our assessment was below the long-term average, because the floods have really interfered with the production system. And for the ASAL counties, because we collect, as I have earlier said, we do monthly bulletins. We already know that the prices of all food products are going up. And we expect that to continue that way. Now, in terms of what we are doing as an organization, we have, and we understand that basically the first thing is to address the preparedness issues which has been affected, because preparedness means preparation for us in our context, preparing for a period of deficit, and particularly in relation to drought. Yeah, so having in place systems for response. We have put in place a cash transfer mechanism in 4 counties of Mandera, Turkana, Wajir, and Marsabit. So in these counties, we provide regular cash transfers to the most vulnerable households, 101,800 households. We normally respond to drought. We have scalable cash transfers, where we transfer cash to additional households that are affected by drought on monthly basis in the same counties. We're also moving to we're including additional 4 counties of Garissa, Isiolo, Tana River, and Samburu. But we must then first do the registration, then do the bank account opening, because without an infrastructure for cash transfers, then you cannot do quick response. We prepared a response plan based on our assessment. Of 75% of the households in those areas could be affected by the impact of COVID-19 because of the market disruptions. Yeah, and that plan we have actually presented to the National Assembly. We have the support of the World Bank as well in terms of repurposing of some of our programs that are supported by some of our partners. We have not yet secured the funding, but we hope to expand cash transfers to additional 270,000 households, and also do vertical cash transfers to take into account the food basket cost. Currently, we are doing 2,700 per month, and we expect that food basket to cost on monthly basis per household, and it's not a full cost of the food basket, 3,500. Yeah, so we have prepared a plan, and we have submitted, and we're expecting funding to cushion these communities from the impacts of COVID-19.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sunya. That was very comprehensive, and it takes us back to what Mheshimiwa Haji was saying about the monies that have been spent over time and the alternative uses that would have taken place. For example, if the money was planted, invested towards particular projects that would be more long-term and sustainable. So I guess, however, what your organization has to figure out is how to make sure that people are surviving. So I think what the national leadership needs to do is to figure out really how to get that balance of, on one hand, making sure that Kenyans are able to survive, but on the other hand, making sure that even the survival mechanisms, they're more well thought out in terms of on a long-term basis. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Sunia. That's very insightful. I'd like to come to Mr. Omar Jibril, just in terms of what's the data that you have right now in terms of what the numbers of people affected, families affected in terms of this COVID-19 situation. What's the data that you have? And
Thank you very much. I think in terms of COVID, COVID has had unprecedented popularity in the face of food security in this country. I don't think COVID has changed the numbers so much. The issue is the situation different over the years in terms of food security? If you look back to the numbers over the years, there's nothing much that has changed. The only thing that has drastically actually changed in COVID is the restrictions of food availability in the different markets. That has changed, and what that does is that it affects the food pricing. And the most unfortunate part of food availability in this country is what Mheshimiwa has alluded to in terms of, the corruption that has bedeviled the National Cereals and Produce Board. I remember when I was growing up, the National Produce Board if you go to every county headquarters, you will find the cereal boards strategically built to store food in each county headquarters. What that meant was that food is always available, so that it is easily can be, whoever has money can access. So it used to do two things. Food used to be stored strategically in each county headquarters. And then what that meant to do was, number one, stabilize the local prices so that the business people don't take advantage of the shortages that happen. That was a key food strategic issue. Food key strategic issue number two was, as farmers produce, there was ready market provided by government, so that food is bought from the farmers and stored. And farmers are given now subsidies in terms of fertilizers at reduced prices and other farm implement extension services. That is history now. It's not happening anymore. You have known the last harvest that we had, a bumper harvest, I think in 2018, July and August. You remember what happened? Farmers, the lorries were queuing for more than weeks. And what was the issue? There was no, encouraging price for the farmers to sell to bring the food. Remember, the farmers were asking for 3,000 a bag of 90 kilos. Right now, the food, the maize that the government wants to import is coming at 4,700. Now you can just see the irony. So my own assessment is that the food crisis situation in this country is not, by default. It's not by accident. It's not by accident. Look, through this importation of food, you are killing your local production, and cartels are making billions. This is the reality of the issue. The other issue is what is happening now. All the cereal, stores in the counties are empty. So people are left to the mercy of the business people. So they can determine, how much profit they want to get from the poor people. Right now, there's the issue of the hunger safety net and other social safety nets. So long as food prices are controlled by the business people, the little 2,500 shillings that those poor people get cannot be sufficient to buy food. So, and I was so surprised when Mheshimiwa said they want to match. Now, I mean, they want to include cash into food reserve. It's so unfortunate because that cash will go to the corrupt cartels. It will import food at extremely high prices by these cartels. And by the time that food arrives, we have thousands of children who are malnourished. It's so unfortunate. Yeah. It means we do not understand the food security parameters, the drivers of food security in this country. This is unfortunate, and this is exactly what is happening.
Thank you. I'm seeing some of our participants are agreeing about the whole idea of cartels, and Easter again talks about that farmers need value for money for their products and support for value chains. She also says that COVID-19 should not be used as an excuse for the crisis. We must address climate change and invest in the same. Topistana Busoba asks panelists, what recommendations do you make for the government to rescue farmers and the food situation in the country? And then also we have some very interesting questions. In the ADC, Dr. Sarah Olembo says, and now she references back to what we were saying about Nyandarua. She says, some years back, milk was poured in Nyandarua for lack of value addition and milk processing facility. I've just heard that Nyandarua too is a home of high value crops such as potatoes, cabbage, onion, carrots, etc. I observe that these are the same crops attracting the erecting of greenhouses that call for high investment on behalf of investors under the guise of agribusiness. What is actually lacking are cooling facilities, roads and transport systems from high areas of production to low areas of production. How can the transport agriculture nexus be tapped together to address this concern? And I think one thing that's really coming out is the whole question of the value chain in the sector. And again, corruption is coming out as an issue. Lack of sufficient data is coming out as an issue, and the issue of value addition, which goes back to that. And so I think so we could actually now give Duncan an opportunity to also just, Duncan, are you there? Hello, Duncan. Okay, well, it would have been interesting to hear his perspectives as well, because CAS also works on food security. But maybe this question now for Mheshimiwa Adan. I know you touched a bit on what Parliament is doing to try to address the current situation, but so maybe you did not go in depth. So maybe you could just take us through some of what Parliament is doing and some of what Parliament is planning in terms of helping Kenyans, shield Kenyans from the COVID-19 situation, especially in the food security issue. And also a very big part of it is about social welfare, because that's one thing. We don't have the social welfare, what do they call it? The nets. We don't have the nets that make sure that the worst of the worst are taken care of. So what is Parliament doing at this time?
Okay, I think before I answer what is Parliament doing, I just want to highlight a little about Mr. Omar's view about having cash money as strategic food reserve. The essence is, hello, am I being heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. The essence is to have this money ready, and when our farmers harvest, and when there is too much, instead of allowing, those people, cartels, to buy at very cheap price, the government buys it at a certain price, which is going to pay back the investment for the farmer and give some profit. It stabilizes the price. That's why that money is kept ready, so that during the harvest, you don't start looking for money. You don't start looking for, asking budget processes or adjustment of budget. to have that money ready. So that is the whole essence. Is not to buy food, maize from Mexico. The essence is to make sure when there is glut, when there's a lot of overproduction, and the cartels want to collect it at a very low price, the government releases money to buy it at a certain good price where the farmers can make profit, and therefore the cartels have no alternative but to compete with that government price, and therefore for the benefit of the farmers. That's the essence. That is the aim. That's the objective. But what normally happens is not always according to the objective. What is the government doing about this food? Of course, the government is doing a lot of things. You very well know that, we all know that there's some money being released every week to the very vulnerable people, particularly those who are living in the slum areas, the very poor people. Some cash is being released. It is being released as cash because initially, as you all know, that during such times, during crisis, the government used to take food. Let's say to take bags of maize or beans or oil to these people. But within the process, one, it becomes very expensive in terms of transportation, in terms of buying and selling and having a lot of middlemen and becoming too expensive. So the government have realized that the best option now is using the electronic system to send that little money to that a very needy person. And that person decides what to buy. Yeah, there's somebody interrupting? Or I want to ask a question? Yeah, what to buy. So that is the objective. The government objective is very, very noble. So that there's no also cartels. There is no air is not released. There is no people in between. It even limits corruption. So that's one thing the government is doing. Two, what the government is doing is to make sure that some value addition is supported. Value addition, some small cottage industries are supported. Of course, you know that agriculture is devolved. And majorly everything will be done by the counties, depending on the comparative advantage of each county. Each county has different types of food crop. Each county has a different type of climatic setup. Each county has got its own different types of soils, and therefore it is devolved. But what the national government does is to put proper policies in place and to support more money in technical and critical areas where maybe there's not enough personnel. Like this in the COVID now, the government has employed so many health personnel, so many health personnel which are not drawing their salaries anymore from the county government, although health is a devolved function. So thousands, I think about 2,000 health personnel has been employed by the central government and deployed to the counties. So these are some of the things that the government is doing. And of course, the other thing is as a member of parliament, of course, my major work is to come up with legislation. And legislation does not only come from the MPs themselves. When I go to my constituencies and people give me ideas, some of them even put some write-ups, give it to me, then I go and put it in a legislative form and sell it through the parliament. And then the other thing is representation. We have to go around and see where the problems are, where the destitutes are, and report to the executive to make sure that they implement, that they use that money prudently to make sure the budget given to them is prudently given. And of course, I repeat again, as I said before, the monster called corruption is with us. I, you, government, everybody have to wake up and fight that monster. And then another issue is lack of coordination. I think lack of coordination is a big issue, not only within the government, even the government departments. The coordination is not very effective. You see the same Ministry of Devolution, Department of Devolution, Department of ASAL, Department of Agriculture, Each of them doing small things, some of them are not very much talking to one another. That's within the ministry. Again, outside, the government plus other players within the food security sector are not coordinating very well. So I think we need to have to coordinate this very well. And the people best placed is like my former classmate, or Sunya, where he is based, plus others. Let us coordinate this.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mheshimiwa. One of the participants, John Muley, says, great insights from you. There's a question to Susan about what can we learn from the Netherlands about food security. But before we come to you, Susan, I'd like to ask Duncan and also Christoph to just chip in here and to just maybe share their own thoughts on, because I know Duncan heads the food security program on Conrad, and he has thoughts in terms of, especially within this Corona time. And also for Christoph, it would be interesting to also, if he could also answer that, the question of food security, that what did Germany do that they managed to get it right. So maybe we can start with Duncan.
Okay, thank you very much, Kamenchu. Very nice insights from the panelists. And I just wanted to interject what Mheshimiwa was saying about cash transfer or electronic transfer of resources to the recipients. What this one promotes is it is only trying to increase dignity of relief, but actually it is not taking us away from relief. We are just trying to dignify relief, but whatever I was saying, that if we put this money of the relief into sustainable food systems, then we shall be hope. So in as much as we shift from actual food distribution to cash transfer, we are only trying to put dignity on behalf of the beneficiaries or the recipients of the relief. So let's try to consolidate this, because this is what we as Conrad, we are trying to promote sustainable food systems, not through direct service delivery, but through system strengthening. And the way you said that you as MPs or people who are in the office, it is not us to make the laws or the regulations, but when we meet with our constituents, the small ideas they give us. Like I saw one of the participants is saying, Dadaab has water all the time, and why can't we have like a sustainable irrigation system? These are some of the nice pieces that we can get from the constituents, so that when we come to legislate, we come up with sustainable food systems. Thank you very much. Kigwa, back to you.
Thank you. And do we have Christoph? Is Christoph here with us still?
No, he's not.
Oh, okay, he's not with us. Okay, I'll just read one or two comments from our participants. So Zakaria Omweri, he had asked the question to Susan Githaiga about the specific lessons that Kenya can learn or borrow from the Netherlands in order to become a food secure country. Again, Zakaria asks to Mr. Sunye Ore from the National Drought Management Authority, is there anything that you're doing to ensure that rainwater is harvested and utilized efficiently to boost food production in the ASAL areas through use of flood irrigation? What have been the main gains or challenges in your undertakings along this line? Priska Charo says, I had Honorable Adan Haji confess on how disappointing it is to note that we were performing much better in food security during the colonial era, and that corruption is a major cause of this. But we have been thinking about corruption for decades and it's not helping. Now my question is addressed, now this is Priska still, my question is addressed to the entire panelists. Why can't majority of government land be used to establish underground bunkers for food transportation, for food production with good transportation channels? This is in preparation for any future worse than COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you for that question, Priska, and all the other questions and comments by our participants. Very visionary thoughts and very visionary ideas, and we really encourage you to keep on sharing. So, we shall give Susan an opportunity to respond to that question on on what Kenya can learn. And then we'll go back to our panelists to talk about now more specifically about what they are doing, whether either at individual level or at institutional level, and how people can plug into that. So maybe we'll start first with Susan, giving that response.
Yeah, so thank you, Kigwa. And I'd like to respond to what the Netherlands is doing, but also to just give a few insights on what my fellow panelists had mentioned. And I'll start with the first question that I think Mheshimiwa and I think also Sunya mentioned, that as a country, some of our staple foods that we rely on, maize, rice, wheat, we import a majority of those foods. So my question to us, is that really sustainable? We import 90% of the rice that we consume. We import 75% of the wheat that we consume. We import 10% of the maize that we consume. And perhaps maize is even more, because sometimes it's hard to track what is imported from Uganda and Tanzania. So when you look at the cost of all this, is this sustainable? Is this something that we need to be asking ourselves? I look at a country like the Netherlands. It is so small. I think it's around 400 kilometers by, like, between you can cross from the east to the west of the Netherlands, the entire country, faster than you can get from Nairobi to Mombasa. But the Netherlands produces their food, and they are one of the biggest exporters of food across other countries in Europe. And how do they do this? And Netherlands, we know, is a land. It is a land that is purely water. Every time you go there, it's always water everywhere. How do they manage to feed themselves and also feed other countries? They're one of the biggest exporters, and they do this by one, use of technology. I saw someone asking about drones and stuff like that. So technology, investing in technology, investing in good water technology, production technology when it comes to research, to seed development, to managing diseases and pests. They have really, over the years, invested in this. We look at the academic institutions. The academic and research institutions are ideally academic and research institutions, which is something that is really lacking in our government institutions. I have been to 3 public universities, and I can tell you for sure, the research part is missing in our public institutions. And this is something that we need to take back to the Parliament and look at how to improve our curriculums, because our institutions of higher learning are primarily supposed to be focused on research and development, because that's how our country grows. When you look at research, innovation, how do we adapt? How do we change? How do we improve? How do we become more efficient? How do we become more effective? So we look at countries like those that their access to finance. And Kenya, we've come a long way from where we were a few years ago in terms of access to finance. We find that if we successfully, as smallholder farmers, and even as we're even moving to looking at larger scale production, how do we change our cultures so that we don't look at land that is supposed to be sustaining us for in terms of food production, and we are busy subdividing this land because of our cultural beliefs and managing, cultural expectations, to a point where we are running out of land for farm production. So it again goes back to some of our cultures. And something else that I would like to mention also, when I'm talking of culture, I also look at the value system. So for example, with our colleagues, when we work with the Dutch, and I'm sure even the Germans, Duncan, you can bear with me, and when you look at the value they place on money, yeah, literally, when you hear the phrase, we go Dutch, if we go to lunch, we all split the bill, everyone pays their bill. I think in my own observation, I think they really place value in up to the last cent. But what do we do as Kenyans? Kingwa, I want to point out to a report that was released by the National Treasury, the Cost of Hunger report. And I'm sure most of us seated in this panel and also the participants, you've heard of the Cost of Hunger report. As of last year, they reported that as a country annually, we are losing 373.9 billion Kenya shillings every year to hunger-related costs. So from production to healthcare to, we are losing so much money in a year. If a Dutch could hear that they're losing 373.9. So I'm just trying to bring out the cultural, how our perspective on our value system. So in terms of just being able, when you calculate the entire system, we lose that much amount of money, and we are comfortable as Kenyans. We are comfortable. We've gotten to a point where in the panel, Mheshimiwa says corruption is our biggest challenge, and for sure it is our biggest challenge, and we hear it, and because it has become the normal conversation, we are no longer, we are not even cynical about it. We just hear it and we move on to the next topic. But yet this is one of our biggest crises, because as much as we have amazing policy documents, and I want to point to the National Food Security Policy paper, policy document that was released for 2017-2022, and that addresses our key food and nutrition security issues. Very good policy documents, very good recommendations. But as we've said, after corruption, we've said we're having challenges with coordination, even coordination of collecting data, coordination of, Mheshimiwa has pointed out over 130 something billion has been allocated to food security from different various departments, but there's no coordination. But this policy document
and also evaluation, monitoring and evaluation.
Yes, and with all that detail, this document clearly gives a good recommendation on formulating a National Food and Nutrition Security Council to be hosted in the office of the president, because one, food and nutrition security is a national security issue. Because you saw what happened the other day when the COVID-19 and ECL was put on lockdown. There were protests because guys were saying, you want us to stay in the house? Yes, but we stay hungry. No, it became now a security issue. So Article 43 of the Constitution, food security is a national security matter. And it deserves the importance it deserves, because without food, all of us will go to the streets and start demonstrating, and there will no longer be peace. But when we see, for example, security sector being allocated 167 billion, right? Which is more than food security, which is the backbone of our economy. It makes us wonder, are we really giving it the importance it deserves? No, we are not. In fact, someone mentioned people will be looking at us as jokers. I think that was Omar. Yes. Looking at us as jokers. Our biggest earner is being allocated that much compared to other departments like security. It is a big joke. So what are we doing? We have good policy documents, but we're not implementing it because our value system is upside down. And it's something that we need to ask ourselves every day. If every year as a country we are losing 373.9, that's 374 billion a year to the cost of hunger, both not having food in our stomach and other forms of hunger, for example, hidden hunger. It is something that we are not supposed to rest. We are not supposed to take it as a joke. And in every conversation, we mention, oh, there's corruption, there's lack of coordination, and we move on to the next topic. No, what are we doing to address this? And that's the difference between, for example, our country, where we talk about this very critical issues, and then we leave it at that. And other countries that go out of their way and have sleepless nights coming up with solutions. So research and development. Someone mentioned the issue of public land, and something I would like to mention. Look at every county. Currently, we have either universities or technical institutions that have been allocated huge chunks of land. What is that land doing right now? For example, in this COVID-19 flooding, locusts period, most of that land is laying idle. But we know we have those agricultural technical institutes, the universities, all of them, they have research and learning. We have the youth in the community that are out of jobs. What are we doing with those pieces of land? they're lying idle at this point. But if we are really seriously we want to eliminate or even to cushion ourselves with this small period of time where our food security is really in crisis, what are we supposed to be doing? Let's utilize these pieces of land. Yeah, let's utilize the knowledge that we have in our knowledge institutions, the young men who now we have over a million young men and women who lost their sources of income due to this crisis. We have people who are just idle in community, but they can go and till and earn a living, at the same time securing our food security for the next couple of months. But no, our universities' lands are laying idle. So let's ask ourselves the critical questions, yeah, and let's act.
Thank you so much, Susan, for that. And I like how you're thinking. You're being very resourceful. You're looking at. You're saying this is a problem. This is where resources are, and it can be done. And again, it goes back to the issue of who is coordinating it, who is actually doing something about that. And I think I'm really glad that you talked about values, because just listening to all that, listening to all this whole discussion, at the back of my mind, I'm like, at the heart of this actually is an issue of values. If we are at the place where it's okay, and it's been okay for so long for us as a country, that every year we have people dying of hunger and starvation in the ASAL areas, it's okay. Like, it's okay. It's okay that money is stolen, whereas at the same time people are dying in hospitals because of lack of money. People are dying because of lack of food. And it really is an issue of our values as a country. Our values we are so dehumanized. We are so dehumanized that we don't care. It's about care. We don't care about each other. We don't care about who survives. It's all about me and myself and I. And one can understand there's actually a background for this kind of value system that we have, that we are all trying to survive, the kind of political structure that's very uncaring, that does the kind of politics that we have also, that's very brutal and that's very toxic on both sides, from both the citizens and to the politicians as well. So it's a big part of this is going to also be about the values. But I also wanted to mention that even as we're talking about this, I think maybe there is some hope, maybe there is space for hope, because even as we're talking, even in all these few weeks and months that have been going on, we have been seeing people going out to the communities, like individuals taking food to places where they don't know anyone, but they feel like this is an informal settlement. These people, I know that every day they survive, like for them it's hand to mouth survival. We've seen companies going out of their way to really try and be philanthropic. And I think moving forward, that is actually going to be the way forward, that we have to really amplify the volume of community and humanity and Ubuntu, that I am because you are. And I guess this is it's a challenge to all of us. It's a challenge to Mheshimiwa in Parliament. It's a challenge to Susan working with farmers. It's a challenge to Sunya at the authority.
NDMA.
Sorry?
NDMA.
Yes, at NDMA. It's a challenge to even to Duncan. It's a challenge to all of us. The question of just how much really can we get back our humanity? I know that Duncan, yes, you'd like to say something.
I just wanted to interject something before you go ahead. Susan talked about very, very successful policy papers and documents, but we'd encourage, what we encourage at CAS and what any other Kenyan would encourage is a policy. There's a process, and we normally stop after making the policy. What our government institutions should ensure is that they have to budget for the policy implementation, because when it is implemented is when it will have the impact on the citizens. So let's take good note of the implementation part of the policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And yes, there are some very, very good documents, reports that have been produced by government institutions, but yeah, without the will, without the political will, then really nothing will happen. So I see two questions. But one came from Zakaria Omweri, and it's to Mr. Jibril. He said, ASAL areas are highly affected by unreliable and unpredictable precipitation, high levels of poverty, and poor skilled labor. What is your forum doing to help the ASAL communities make a shift towards better farming systems, such as use of irrigation and greenhouse farming for improved food production capacities in the ASAL areas? So that was to Jibril. Then the other question was from Meshach to Honorable Haji. He said, ask Honorable Haji if Parliament through the National Assembly and Senate are using the IGAD regional framework to hold governments at both levels accountable on plans to make the region food secure. Uganda, Ethiopia, and Tanzania seem to be getting it right. What about Kenya? So those are the last two questions I will take before we have the final end from our panelists.
Okay.
Okay, Jibril, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think we need to understand the value of the production systems in the different parts of this country. In the ASAL areas, the production is on livestock and livestock products, and that is where the focus of investment should be. Not irrigation for maize production, but irrigation for fodder production. And that's how actually we need to do the paradigm shift. So that, because remember, livestock and livestock production supply systems are maintained by the ASAL areas. For example, if you look at meat or milk or skins and hides and skins and all that, plus so many other products come from the ASAL areas. So the problem with this country is that when we think of food production and food security, we only think of crop, and that's where we have gone wrong. You don't have to, we don't all of us to have to produce maize. Let the maize production belts be supported to do that. The rice production belts are the same. The fish production, and then for the pastoralist counties, let them invest in livestock, and that system, livelihood system, needs to be supported. But otherwise, if we all think of agriculture as crop, that's where we get it wrong, and that's why even the counties that rely on more than 80% on livestock are also trying to invest in crop, which doesn't do very well in those areas. Of course, there are areas within the ASAL areas that crops can also do well, yes, but the main focus is on livestock. For example, you will find that beekeeping can do very well in the ASAL areas, but we have done, an assessment. Almost none of the ASAL counties, especially the upper, the purely pastoralist counties, have any expert in beekeeping as one of their employees, but they have more than necessary fish extension officers. You can see how ridiculous some of the way we do our planning is. So I think we need to focus by understanding the specifics of every region in this country. And I agree with the comment that, we have the best policies in this country, but there's completely no policy tracker. There's no implementation. So if, in fact, to me, apart from representation and Parliament, I don't think there's any legislation that requires to be legislated anymore. Parliament should only focus now in coordination, in implementation, making sure that the executive delivers. Now, when it comes to policies, the issue is the national parliament, the national government ministries. If you look at it, their main focus after devolution is basically policy and policy formulation. They formulated, long before devolution, they're still formulating, but unfortunately, that policy is not informing planning and implementation at the county level. And no one is following up with that one. And that is where the biggest disconnect is. And I think as ASAL Stakeholder Forum, we are now changing our focus from basically coordinating stakeholders to coordinating communities, to bringing out the community voice into planning and policy formulation. And so that they are part and parcel of the development agenda in their counties, in their communities, so that they participate. They are only not recipients of poorly planned, corruption-informed programs and projects. That is where we will focus, and we want to bring the Wanjiku voice, to facilitate Wanjiku voice to be heard by the policy makers and implementers. And that's where actually now we are refocusing in bringing the community now to take active role in their affairs.
That's very interesting, and yeah, it sounds very interesting, and I do agree with you on in the whole issue of that. Yeah, there should be a bigger push in terms of execution, making sure that execution happens. So, Honorable Haji.
Yeah. Okay. There's a question about how do we compare ourselves with the neighboring countries like Ethiopia and others in terms of food security? Yes.
And also IGAD, how to use the IGAD mechanisms to push the government.
Yes, I think there is this, we formed recently, about a year and a half ago, the East African Parliamentary Alliance on Food Security and Nutrition. All these countries are there. 11 countries of the Eastern Africa are there. We are comparing notes. We are learning from one another. And whenever we have about twice meeting, every year, twice meetings, and bring all these ideas together. And whenever we get this, we make a report to the parliaments, and where there is legislation is required, we put it in legislative form, and the rest of it, we give it as a report to the implementing agencies, the ministries. And but the problem we have is that comparing ourselves with most of these countries, there is something called production cost, which is just too high in Kenya. Production cost. That is why we are importing almost everything. Imagine sugar imported from Malaysia, maybe through Somalia, having come through Al-Shabaab hands, having been taxed and come through a lot of corruption. When it lands in Garissa market, or in Isli market, or in Nairobi market, is far much cheaper than our locally produced sugar. This is one big problem that we have compared to our neighboring. And when we looked at it very seriously, one thing is the labor cost. Kenyans are very expensive, for your information, compared to labor within the neighboring countries. When maybe manual labor per day is being paid 100 shillings a day in Ethiopia. Yeah, in Kenya it's 1,000 shillings a day, or 800 or 500, from 500 to 1,000 shillings a day. Labor cost is just too high. This is because of our culture. We want to become rich very fast as Kenyans. It's a culture. Each Kenyan wakes up, finishes school today, tomorrow he wants to drive a BMW, he wants to have a good, we are very expensive. The other thing is land use. We have looked at it. While our production cost is very, we don't look at the specific land that we have, the types of soils, the types of rainfall in that area, and the specific either crop or a livestock to keep in that area. What we do is there are some traditional crops that our great-grandfathers have been doing it, and we have to do it. A good example is people are doing maize, trying maize in Ukambani. In every 5 years, they harvest 1 year. The other 4 years, they still have hope. They cultivate, they cut all the trees, grow maize, it fails this year. Next year, it fails. Then the 4th year or so, they get a good harvest. That keeps them another 4 years hope. If those vegetations were left, if those areas were left for livestock production, camels and goats, I assure you, Ukambani could have been free of hunger. That's another thing. Another thing we have is, another big problem we have is the value addition. We have very little value addition. And I'm sure most of you have gone to America. The crop they call corn and what we call maize there, if you go to a supermarket, you will see 1,000 types of products made from corn. Lakini sisi mahindi yetu ni ugali. Finish. Githeri ugali. That's another thing. It's unfortunate also that our production cost is becoming very high because we don't use technology effectively. It's unfortunate. We have a lot of universities, we have a lot of technical colleges all over every county, but our technological use, our technological adaptation, our technological skills are wanting compared to even our neighboring countries. They use a lot of technology, and that makes our cost of production again still very high. So we have compared ourselves. Now the question we have is, how do we reduce our cost of production? Because we cannot compete in these markets unless we reduce our cost of production. We cannot compete with the neighboring market. That's why maize from Uganda is far much cheaper than maize from our place. So that's a factor we need to look at, and we are looking at it very critically and see even how maybe we come up with the legislations that can enforce, or our liberal markets also. Our democracy is very high. I think our democratic level is just too high. Our freedom is just too high. Some of these things, even the government, if it tries to restrict it, the public will go against it and it will not work well. So that is why we are not able to compare ourselves easily with these countries. Imagine we exported soil. This red soil, this red volcanic soil from Muranga, we exported it. We gave it to the Israelis. They carried it in containers. They moved to Israel in the desert. They grew wheat, and then they exported the wheat back to us. It's very unfortunate. The soils were ours. They don't have those soils. They call it the So it is very unfortunate. We have to make sure that some of these critical things, we look at it. Finally, patriotism in Kenya. Patriotism. We are too much individualistic. You just look at yourself. What is it in for you? That is a Kenyan culture. We don't say what is it in there for the community or for the country, what is good for our country. We say what is good for me. What is in it for me? This culture has to change for us to survive. Good.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mheshimiwa. And so so now we are at the end of this. We're just wrapping up. I'll just read this question by Achieng Osogo, but it won't be answered. She asks, will small-scale initiatives work now that macro initiatives seem hard to achieve, and what would those be? So as we end, I just want to thank everyone who's been part of this discussion. I want to thank you, first of all, for all the work that you've been doing at this time, away from the public light, and just really, I know it hasn't been an easy job, especially like in the Asal region, all the work that's been going on there. Thank you, Mr. Senior Ore, for really sharing your thoughts and sharing all the work that NDMA has been doing. Thank you, Mr. Omar Jibril, for again giving us your very hard-hitting and very, what's the word? I'm trying to look for the word. Very direct, being very direct with your perspectives, and I think we do need a lot more of that honesty if we are going to move forward. And thank you as well, Susan, for just your very visionary thoughts, visionary ideas, and Mheshimiwa as well, for especially one thing I really like about you, Mheshimiwa, is you're in the middle of politics, which is very muddy and very toxic, but you still have that spirit of, you still have a spirit of hope, which is a good thing. So now, as we're talking here, this has been a very good discussion. I think we've come up with some very good points and perspectives. And for me, I'm always about what next, what is happening next. And I think because one of the key things that has come up is the issue of coordination in this space. And it's the fact that it's not that the resources are not there. It's not that the money is not there. It's not that the expertise is not there. It's not that the soil and everything is not there. It's just that it is just all over the place. So moving forward in future, it might be interesting to have the agricultural sector. I don't know if there's any annual conferences to actually talk about this and push them forward, but I'm just pushing that to you, to everyone, as something to start thinking about. And coming again from the perspective that in every problem, there's an opportunity. So even in the problem of lack of data, that's an opportunity for researchers. And I want now that's for all the participants to listen. Well, if there's a problem of coordination, it means there's an opportunity for leadership. It means there's an opportunity for something to come in. With that, then I will just, would any of our participants want to like just have 10 seconds to say, just give any final thoughts? Okay, well, that's fine. So, but I think, yeah, so thank you so much. Thank you so much, our panelists. And I shall now give it back to Duncan at Conrad, and he can finally close us.
Thank you there, Kamenjo, very much for moderating this. I take this opportunity to thank all the panelists. It was nice and important insights there from our panelists and the attendees, especially the questions they posed. Or we might not have answered everything, but I know generally they have been responded to, partially or fully. Or indeed, this will go along in strengthening our work on governance on food security. And I request all our panelists and attendees to continue following us on Facebook or Twitter and watch the deliberations if you might have missed something, and continue sharing so that we reach a wider population with this. And the last one, I really want to relay our thanks from CAS, and I wish you a very restful evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for hosting us, Duncan. Asante sana.
Asante sana, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want us to reconnect again in future. So this is a goodbye for now. Yeah, but really good minds, and very, very honored to have met you and to have had this discussion with you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, have a good evening, everyone, and stay safe.